I hope you can hear us all right. Thank you for joining us. We are recording today. We had some requests from members who weren't going to be able to attend, but wanted to be able to access this information. So just a heads up to all that are on that we are recording. We kind of started this topic at the board meeting, and then we have recently compiled survey results again from last board meeting, and we're seeing again there's interest from membership. Some are very interested in demand side resources in this topic. Some are somewhat, and somewhat. Some of you are, I think, maybe wanting to just learn some more. So today is kind of going to be informal. We do have some slides to go through, but I would appreciate it if, we make it a conversation and you all stop as we go along and share what what concerns you're getting from your customers, what your customers are telling you they're interested in. What we're hoping to gain from this today is, just some more understanding and general, but then start to get a feel for where we want to go next and how we can be of help. Right. Okay. Technical difficulties, sorry. Okay, so agenda, we're going to walk through what are demand side resources. We were laughing yesterday that there are so many different terms for this topic. So just make sure we're all on the same page before we go forward. Why are we talking about these? What are the actual benefits that we can see? What are programs that we're seeing in your surrounding communities? What are the IOUs offering? What are some of you all offering, if anybody is offering these types of programs already? And then how can we help in this space, and where do we think that we should go moving forward? So starting out with just the general definition, I call this demand side resources. Sometimes you hear it called demand side management. Demand side resource is just the flip side to the supply side resource that you see when folks are going out for RFPs and IRPs and that sort of thing. It's all encompassing as far as resources that count for resource adequacy by reducing your load, making so you don't need to add additional generation is the overall topic there. Sometimes the pieces that fall under this, main two are energy efficiency and demand response. Energy efficiency really being types of technology and design practice to help reduce the load, but not changing the customer experience. So you can think about, I need to run my dishwasher, right? If I swap out to a more energy efficient dishwasher, my dishes are just as clean as they were before, but I use less electricity. So that's what we're talking about, is energy efficiency. Conservation, which is a little bit different, is going to be more of put more dishes in the load and run it fewer times. Does that make sense? So there are going to be different programs in both of these. And as we're talking through today, we couched this as both an electric and natural gas. A lot of these programs can work for both utilities. I tend to think electric because I'm so heavy into the pools, but as we're walking through, some of these work just as much on the natural gas side as they do for electric. Demand response on the other side, this is really more targeted reduction during specific times of the day. As you all know, we've talked about this a lot. The electric market specifically is priced very differently at different parts of the day, and we have to size the system based on your peak. So reducing that peak has savings from both the capacity side and on those high-priced energy hours as well. So targeting the reduction, you can do that. We've talked about demand voltage reduction is one type of program that does this. Controllable thermostat programs, those can actually play in both the energy efficiency and the demand response space. But from a demand response standpoint, this would be actually pre-cooling during part of the day so that we can not be running during the peak. That sort of thing would be the demand side component of that. Time of use rates would also fall into this, something that's trying to shift that usage to a different time frame, get you off that peak essentially. Okay, benefits. So why? Generally, we're not in the space to tell you to sell less of your product. So why does this make sense? Why can it make sense from a financial standpoint? I think is an important message, both from us to you, but then also from you to your customer, that I think we need to consider. We mentioned the beginning driving force in looking at demand side resources is that resource adequacy component, right? We've been saying capacity is tight, capacity is hard. You know, we are looking at supply side resources that have risk involved in order to build them. This is an alternative that also complies with resource adequacy requirements. So if you look at SPP and MISO rules regarding resource adequacy, SPP in particular, their planning reserve margin that you need to meet, that is against your net peak load. And so it nets out behind the meter, or not behind the meter, demand response type programs from that. So these can be used towards those resource adequacy requirements. Chad, did you have a question?
Yeah, so if you try to count it towards your resource adequacy requirements, you have to have pretty formal program, I assume, to be able to, okay, what was that demand response that was achieved that we're counting towards capacity credits, as opposed to an informal program that you're trying to get the same results, but you're not necessarily tracking them as robustly. Is that reason, right?
Right. So there's different rules in each market, but generally speaking, you can just count the demand response as part of your net peak load. If you want to register it in the market as a specific market resource and have the market be the one doing the dispatching and the calling, there are different rules around what you need to do. In that case, there would actually be testing that you would be required to do to show the RTO. I told you I could drop this much. This is how much I can drop, just like you would with a generator. So in some cases, it's treated, you know, a lot like a generator from that standpoint. Yeah. Good question. So sometimes you'll hear this called a virtual power plant. It's essentially building that reduction in the peak like a power plant would without building it. So since there is, you know, no new generation being built for this peak, it does help because it doesn't require new transmission. You know, when we talk about supply side resources, we have to talk about the supply, and then we also need to get the transmission from it to you. So that's one of the other benefits to this type of a resource. From your customer standpoint, my guess is you get a lot of customers saying that they want more control over their bill. They want lower bills. From a messaging standpoint, this allows you to give them more control over what that bill is, whether you're laughing, whether they take it or use it or it backfires. That's up to them, but at least it does provide the customers with more control, which could be beneficial for them. And then, you know, as we're talking about future regulatory pieces, EPA, carbon, this would have no emissions, so it would be a risk-free from that standpoint type of resource. Are there things that I've missed that you guys can think of, or? We will, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so those are just some of the benefits. Obviously, just like any resource, there are going to be issues with all of these too that we can talk through. Things that make these programs difficult or hard to measure, and we'll talk through that side of the equation as well. So like Chad was mentioning, measurement and verification is really important for these programs. If you're going to be, you know, building a program, you want to make sure that it makes sense and those savings that you're expecting are there. So we would expect that any system we would want to put in place, we would have some sort of measurement so we can make sure we're doing what we were hoping we would do. There are lots of different ways to calculate the cost benefit ratio on these. You'll see all sorts of different acronyms if you didn't have enough acronyms to begin with. One of those types of benefit cost ratios is the utility cost test, which is looking at the benefits from the utility standpoint. You can also look at the benefits from the end customer standpoint. So there are lots of different calculations that can be done there. But benefits to the utility, like we mentioned, would be avoided energy. Ideally, you're avoiding the higher priced energy. Capacity, since it can count toward resource adequacy. Environmental compliance costs, and then again, there's that potential on the transmission and distribution cost side that would have to be looked at. On the cost side, each of these programs are a little bit different, and we haven't gone out to bid them, so I'm not sure exactly how each of these programs would be structured. But generally, there's some sort of program administration cost. If it's a software you're buying, there's going to be some sort of an annual licensing fee for that. And then if you're providing financial incentives to customers, that's one of the costs that would be included. And then any sort of education, promotion, letting folks know that you have the program. Those are all the costs that we would be weighing against those benefits. Okay, so what is actually out there? What types of programs are your customers seeing around? What are our neighbors doing? One of the programs that's probably the most common out there are smart thermostats. This program, like I said, it can do both energy efficiency in that if people are putting in, different parameters for when they're home and when they're not home, there's just that general using less. But then also there's the demand response component of it. If you have those smart thermostats be controllable. So this is one of the programs that OMPA was talking about when they were here. And we've since had a call with the developer or the consultant that they're using for their program. So a little bit of information about how that type of program actually takes place and what the economics look like is in the particular company that they're working with, the company provides a software, right? It is just a software company. So you pay for the license fee for that and the amount to get it installed into your system. And then your customers bring their own thermostats to the program. So people already have Nest thermostats or, some of the other smart thermostats that are out there. They can also buy a new one and bring it into your program. Like I have here for Ameren and Evergy, a lot of times they either pay for the new thermostat outright or they'll give the customers like a $50 bonus if you already have one and you're bringing it to try to incentivize customers into the program. And then the software helps look for peak times that you might want to call on the controllable load, in which case then you could schedule which thermostats are going to get moved around and how they get moved around, how long your event is going to be. The software could text or email those customers and say, hey, we're going to call an event tomorrow afternoon from this time to this time. Expect pre-cooling to happen, and then you can opt in or opt out. Or well, you can opt out of the event is probably the way they set that up. They said that they generally expect about 1 kilowatt per thermostat or per customer. So I'm not sure what territory it is that they were calculating that on, but that was their general estimate. They also said that this particular company can look by zip code and see how many smart thermostats you already have in your system, in your territory, to get a feel for how quickly you could get adoption rates to go through. So I thought that was interesting. Another component of this is the software company in this case would bill you a certain amount per thermostat per year. And then the thermostat companies, the OEMs, actually also have a charge. So you as a customer don't have to pay this charge for your Nest, but as soon as you plug it into this program, now there's like a $20 or $30 a year fee that's paid by the utility that's running the thermostat program. So those were kind of some interesting things that I learned about this particular type of program. But it's beneficial from the utility standpoint in that you can have a lot of dexterity in which regions you're actually calling the demand response on. From an MPUA standpoint, if we were running a program like this, for instance, we could just call MOPEP at this time and not call Hannibal if they wanted to be in the program too, or we could just do Hannibal and not MOPEP. We could look at different peak times and run the program differently. Yeah, go ahead.
Or even if you're doing MOPEP, you could call MOPEP that's in the MISO, the connected cities, because there's a transmission constraint or something instead of MOPEP as a whole.
Right. Yep. And then the software would do the measurement piece of it to see what the response was.
Rebecca, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah,
but
no.
is one of the value, you mentioned that the utility has to pay for access to the thermostat, basically. Is the are the utilities seeing that as a cost that's, well, it's a cost, but it's better than maintaining the old type of system where you're trying to do hot water heater controls and or AC controls and stuff like that, and you had to maintain your own equipment to communicate with it? This way, you're just paying them, it's already there, use the internet and be done with it. Is that what the utilities are kind of justifying, that added cost?
I think so. I mean, I think they're just building in all of the pieces into that utility cost test and seeing, okay, do we think that we can make enough value to cover all these pieces? The other thing of interest with that type of a software platform is you could integrate thermostats into it, but you can also integrate water heaters, EV charging, other pieces into the same sort of platform. So from MPUA's standpoint, it's something where, there's one license, one software license, and then we'd have to pay per thermostat. But if, Hannibal wanted to do a program and Columbia wanted to do a program and MOPEP wanted to do a program, but you all want to do it separately, you'd have 3 times the software license fee, essentially. So there is some economies of scale in this type of program, doing something organizational wide that maybe some of the other programs don't have. In these slides, and we can send these out after the meeting, I did put links in here to all of the information that I pulled, so you can go pull it too. So for instance, you want to go see what exactly does Ameren's program look like? What are they paying people? They have a nice streamlined thermostat store that you can go out and pick your thermostat and enroll in the program and that sort of thing. So kind of slick. Evergy's is pretty much the same. See if I can adequately toggle back here. Any other questions on thermostat programs? Folks online, feel free to jump in as well. I did note down here, it does not require AMI. We have had lots of questions and confusion on that. You do not have to have AMI to run this type of program or to see the same value from it. It does require Wi-Fi or cell service in order to make the connection, but you do not have to have AMI.
Yeah, because you're relying on the customer's connectivity of their own thermostat to their own internet connection. You're not directly creating a utility connection to their thermostat.
Correct.
Be safe to say if you had AMI, then you wouldn't have to depend upon the customer.
I guess I don't know about that for these thermostats, because they'd still, For the customer to use it.
Yeah, that, you're
for the
right, you're
customer to
right.
Use it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you're connecting with the meter, not the thermostat, right?
Now, the AMI might help you measure a little more accurately.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Moving on to the next program we're seeing out there. Flexible rates, so time of use rates, pick your umbrella term again. I pulled this picture from Evergy's website about a month ago, and they've already updated again. Obviously, Evergy is moving forward with this, probably the quickest in the state as far as requiring everyone to move to time of use rates in the future. They have giant billboards all throughout the Kansas City region saying Missouri is moving to time of use rates with a little tiny Evergy symbol behind it. So if you get questions, you can let them know that that is just Evergy. However, if you live in Marshall, we're also moving to time of use rates, which will be, are yours optional or yours? Yeah.
Certainly provide that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think Ameren is still providing it as an optional service.
I think so.
These, unlike the other program, do require AMI and a billing system smart enough to be able to integrate it. One of the big benefits here is going to be getting EV rates in place before the EV penetration hits your system. It's going to be really important for that peak to make sure that people don't come home and plug in when they get home from work, because that's just going to drive up your peak. And so this is really a proactive program to try to get people used to changing their behavior, or just making it a technology that can change it before it's too late, I suppose.
Or they can plug in, but the technology manages it so that it's not being used until off peak.
Yeah, so we know of Marshall that's moving to time of use rates. Is anybody on the phone looking at time of use rates or flexible rates?
Rebecca, I think we plan to in Springfield at some point. We've been gathering data so that they can figure out what the rate looks like. But I think at some point we plan on doing that, mainly for, as you mentioned, to make sure that we're taking care of the EV issue that's coming out here, because sooner or later, as you get more and more of those on your system, yeah, that 5 o'clock plug-in when you turn your air conditioner down is going to be brutal if we don't do something with it.
And this is Hannibal. I would just ditto what was just said. We're kind of doing the same thing. We're not anxious to get there, but we believe eventually we'll have to.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and as far as where MPUA fits into this space, we don't really plug in quite as well. We don't have necessarily rate study services right now. We are trying to help Marshall with their communications of their plan. From the pool standpoint, we did switch their rates to provide the information to create time of use rates by giving that hourly price signal. So we did that ahead of time to help those cities. But I think this might be one that we can maybe be more of an education and, stand behind you if you need help at your meetings where you're trying to get these pushed through to make sure people know the importance and the reason why.
Certainly appreciate their help, but I think as we get further along in this, I think we look forward to being able to share, what we learned. But Connie and Ashton have been very helpful in kind of getting materials that we can push forward to our customers. So definitely appreciate it.
Thanks for that, Jeff. And Ashton was the one that did the lion's share of the work. But one thing I might mention too is, even if you don't think that you're going to time of use rates, some of that stuff you can pull out and use for education, because it is helpful. It's going to take a long time for customers to get used to pricing changing during the day. And the earlier you start, even if you think it's going to be 5 years from now, it certainly doesn't hurt to start using some of those materials to let your customers know, put it more as a customer friendly type thing. Like you don't want to use your major appliances like your dryer and your dishwasher and your oven during those late afternoon hours because you're heating up your house, your air conditioner is going to have to work harder. You might put a little twist on it, but anything that we can do to kind of get customers more aware that there's different consequences for using power at different times of the day.
All right, next program that we have on the list of what we're seeing around the state. This is more specific to commercial and industrial customers. We're seeing commercial industrial demand response programs. Specifically with Ameren, they're partnering with a company called NLX to run their program. So Ameren's not even doing it, they're consulting it out. They, in the last year or so between when I originally started looking at these programs and when I was checking my links last week, they've taken out a lot of the specifics on some of these programs online. So I don't know if they've changed the programs or what they've done, but in general, these types of programs are providing a financial incentive through a different rate structure for commercial industrial customers so that Ameren through NLX can call and get your commercial industrial customers to take some sort of action to get off during high peak times. Ameren's particular program runs May through September. They say they're going to give at least an hour before an event. They tell likely hours between 3 and 7, but I'm guessing by likely hours, it gives them the flexibility during a URI to call it whenever they need to. And then they say dispatch is generally 1 to 4 hours. So the commercial industrial customer gets a phone call or a text or a dispatch or something, and then they do what they can to get off. Some of the types of reduction that they're suggesting on these types of programs would be lighting, changing your manufacturing processes. Obviously, some industries can do that and some cannot. Adjusting your HVAC equipment, dialing back pumps, changing settings in industrial freezers. And then sometimes if they have certified self-generation, that would be where you might be like, hey, you want to turn that backup generation on for me now? So it would be a way to do that, and they would see a financial incentive for that. Evergy has a similar program. Theirs is also run by a separate contractor by Clear Result. Similar type events for them. Last time I checked, these programs were not being offered into the market explicitly. They were just kind of using them to decrease their peaks behind the scenes. They might change that in the future as the market rules are changing also in this space, but that's kind of how they're using those. I know during URI, we did a little bit of this on the gas side, and maybe even some of you were able to call some of your commercial industrial customers and get them to switch shifts or not do a third shift or a middle shift or something like that. But what else are you all doing? I think Columbia, they have a curtailment rate, but last time I talked to them, they haven't called a curtailment event in a while. Anybody else have curtailable commercial industrial customers or a program like this that they're using? Okay.
Yeah, Rebecca, we do in Springfield, we have an interruptible rate, and we have one interruptible customer. He's actually a cryptocurrency miner. And so we do interrupt them based on, really, we usually look at the market, and when they get above a certain price, that's when we'll interrupt them.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got two. One's a feed company. They can schedule their manufacturing around that. Yeah, just 2 hour notice, kind of the same thing. You really don't know.
Yeah.
That has worked well for us with the few that have had this.
And this is another one of those spaces where, clearly there are contractors out there that provide this service because that's what the IOUs are using. So if there was response from the members that this is something you wanted us to look at. Maybe there's some sort of economies of scale to be used. So it's just another option that's out there. Just wondering, have any of your industries asked specifically for it? Okay. For a while, I know that there were some companies out there asking to aggregate this type of piece, so I didn't know how heavy they were advertising in our cities still. Rebates have been around for a long time, I think. I pulled some different utilities on this one because Columbia has a good program that provides rebates for energy efficiency, for energy audits, all sorts of different energy efficiency upgrade type pieces. The cooperatives have an interesting platform on the energy efficiency rebate space, which might be something there would be interest in here. They have one program called Take Control and Save, and it provides like one platform that then all the different co-ops can link their websites to, that has information on, just general energy efficiency tips. It also has links to enrollment in their rebate programs or low interest loan type programs. So if you're interested, I've put a link to what their program looks like here. They've got it registered as Take Control and Save. But if you then go to the different co-op websites, you can see that same branding and programs. My guess is they have some sort of an a la carte program behind the scenes where, if this co-op wants to offer rebates for this particular appliance or this particular HVAC, they can say, yep, I want to do that one in my city and I want to do this one in my city. So it's a little bit like an a la carte, but the main co-op is providing the platform for it. So I thought that might be something that would be kind of replicable in our space or would have a similarity there, as opposed to just being different for every city. Then I also have links to how Columbia does theirs. They have a great website with lots of good information. And Liberty also has some efficiency and rebates in this space and in the commercial industrial space here as well. So I know some of you have rebate programs already. Anybody care to share news about their programs?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about ours a little bit if you want to in Springfield. It actually.
Yep, keep going.
Okay.
Keep going, Steve. Then we'll
You're
have
good. I was
Jeff
just seeing you on a
talking.
little screen, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm talking over somebody or not. But
Yeah,
anyway, I
Jeff
mean,
didn't have his mic on.
Yeah,
Go
no, we're
ahead.
good. We have both water and electric, and so we have toilet rebates on the water side. Sometimes we're giving out shower heads, that kind of stuff. We've actually used that at times here on the water side for when we're going into some kind of a drought to try and encourage people to help, take control of some of what their impact could be during a drought. So I mean, we've done enhanced rebates at times. We've done installation rebates where we cover, I think it's like a third of the cost of the installation. And we've actually done those going into wintertime before if we knew it was going to be a particularly bad winter for gas prices, where we might use that as a way to encourage some of our customers to do extra insulation. So for like a 2-month period, we might do a 50% rebate instead of a 30% rebate to try and encourage them to insulate their homes before the winter. We have commercial lighting. Commercial lighting is a super popular one, going to LEDs. So that's been a very popular one for us. So, we kind of have a list of them. Some kind of come and go. Every 5 years, we do an effectiveness review on our entire rebate program to make sure that the benefit is more than the cost. And that's actually an external review where we'll bring somebody in, look at them all, go through our programs, look at what our costs have been, what our savings have been, and then quantify that to make sure that they're all valid. And sometimes if some aren't doing what we want them to do, that's the time we'll phase some out, maybe phase some new ones in. We actually have an EV plug rebate right now too for builders. So our hope was to get all new houses built with an EV plug in their garage. So we basically rebate the cost of putting an EV plug in a home for a new builder.
Okay, thank you. Go for it, Jeff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, we're kind of reviewing that. I mean, when you're going to time of use, you kind of review a lot of different things. You know, we're looking at thermostats. Also looking at, we do have air source and ground source existing rebate programs, but they're 10 or 15 years old. So we're kind of trying to freshen those up. There's some new, you know, some of your SEER ratings. Now there's a SEER 2 rating, and, you know, how you want to handle that as far as what your minimums are. I don't know that in this area, the SEER minimums have raised. I think in Southwest US, they've gone up a little bit, but, you know, we're looking at things like that too, that you know, can incentivize customers. You know, it's not just, I think it dovetails good with time of use. You're trying to get around the peak period, then you're trying to, you know, lower the peak even more by, you know, having more efficient appliances potentially and with your customers as well. So, yeah, we don't advertise it good enough probably, which is probably not a bad thing right now since it's really kind of outdated. Doesn't have your mini splits on there. I know a lot of you probably seen a lot more of your mini split heating and cooling systems that you know, have come around the last few years. So we're looking at probably including those as well if they're efficient.
Thank you. Anybody else on the phone have any rebate programs that they're working with? Along with the rebates, a lot of times you'll see some sort of an energy efficiency financing. So, you know, if you're going to do a big HVAC replacement or something like that, where there would be on-bill financing. This PAYS program is a pay-as-you-save. So it's on-bill financing for those energy efficiency products for those folks that, you know, can't pay for that whole thing up front. The piece that's difficult with this is there is some calculation that needs to be done to make sure that the amount on the bill and the amount that they're saving are netting out appropriately. So I think that's part of what's difficult in this type of program a little bit, but it is something that both Evergy and Ameren have rolled out. I've seen some co-ops that have done this type of program as well. I don't know if any of you have this in particular. I know Columbia has a loan program that they do. Any interest in this one particularly? Okay. Go ahead.
I think that part of the problem early on, and Columbia just has a low interest loan program for energy efficiency improvements, and they even let people use it for solar. But I think part of the problem is actually getting to the point where you can figure out and quantify exactly what that savings is going to be to make sure that the savings on their utility bill kind of pays for those energy system improvements. So that's to me, it's a pretty tricky program to administer and get right without, you know, especially if you're doing it for low income customers or fixed income customers where that needs to be an equal thing. So that's my only input.
Thank you. All right. I think maybe the last program I have on here covers the behavioral energy efficiency type pieces. So these are kind of the freebies, so to speak, as far as just changing people's behavior through education. There's some cost to the education or communications component of it, but there have been a lot of studies on the benefits and the capabilities of just getting people to change their behavior and their habits, and that can be a low cost solution as well. Ameren has some energy efficiency STEM kits that they provide for the schools, you know, something to start getting the kids interested in learning and going home and telling their parents, hey, we need to do this. I know if my kids do it enough that I'll cave and do whatever it is that they say. So maybe that's one place to start. Columbia has some educational programs as well. We have partnered with Apogee, which has some of the energy advisor and educational piece to that as well. Connie probably knows more about that if you want to plug that one a little bit.
Yeah, we have several members that subscribe to this, and it's almost like an online resource for energy efficiency stuff. You have to make sure that you're advertising and it's prominently displayed so people can use it. But your customer service representatives can also use it to help people, if maybe not while they're angry about their high bill and that type of thing, but sidebar conversation on some things to help them evaluate their energy use. One thing that they offer that none of our members have done yet is they integrate their software with your billing system, and it creates little videos each month that they'll email to the customer. The video pops up and says, your bill might have been higher this month. It's probably due to more days in the billing cycle. The temperature was 5 degrees higher than it was last year at this time. You might consider adding insulation, and it has different tips. Those are, I think, I was part of a pilot, and even for me who knew a little bit about energy efficiency, I found them really spot on good tips to do. So that might be something that we have another webinar and kind of show, but something that's a little bit more proactive than just having resources on your website that someone has to go to. These just come along around the time they get their bills, and they've had great response rate with that.
Yes, thank you. Then we talked some about the communications earlier, getting folks just to recognize the impact of, running your dryer at the peak time of day or that sort of thing, giving folks alerts to peak demand times. I know Raleigh is doing a program kind of similar to this where you're just publicly appealing to see if you can get folks to change their behavior, providing general energy efficiency tips. One of the coolest programs that I've seen is run by Oracle, and it uses AI and behavioral science to change people's behavior through like a gaming app, right? So it has your energy usage plugged in, just like how on your Fitbits you can, compete with other people to see who gets the most steps. In this program, you're basically competing with your neighbors to use less energy. So it shows your usage in comparison to other similar type homes or places in your area. And then you compete and you see who wins. And it's really kind of a low cost program from a tech standpoint. But for those maybe who are a little more techie and like the game aspect of things, it's kind of an easy way to change behavior. So that's one of the nerdy options that is out there that I think is cool. Maybe not right for our group quite yet, but all options are on the table. So I did provide some links to those as well if you are nerdy also. Okay, those are some of the main programs that I've highlighted. I know that's not everything in this space. There are tons and tons of vendors and programs and things going on. Have I missed anything major that you all have seen or have had customers ask for, or programs that you're already running?
I think where we get into people asking for things that are sometimes difficult for us to figure out is our rental properties here in Springfield. I mean, I think we're like 60% rentals, and the landlords really struggle for energy efficiency. So a lot of times our rental homes are the most inefficient things ever. And we've tried programs in the past to try and reach out to those landlords, and it's just never really resonated with anybody. So I don't know if anybody ever has a best practice for what to do with landlords to try and get them to do some energy efficiency upgrades. We've even had times where we've done it for them, And some of the landlords are so reluctant to let us even in their house that they won't let us actually do improvements for free.
A lot of landlords do. They're pretty reluctant to participate with anything. You know, they don't have to pay the utility bill. I think they'd be better. They're happier when you're nowhere around. They just want to collect their rent and go on. So.
Yeah, that's what we found too. I mean, when you start talking about energy efficiency, man, here in Springfield, it's your rental houses because they don't have insulation, they don't have good windows, they don't have upgraded heating and air conditioning systems. I mean, I think sometimes they pay more in a utility bill than they pay in rent.
Yeah, we've had some college students call us about high bills, and we go look at the house, and we're basically trying to heat a cardboard box. And
Yeah,
I mean, you can educate the customers, but the landlords, yeah, we haven't had much luck with them.
yeah. Yeah, we haven't either. I mean, I know Springfield has toyed with the idea, I think, of doing inspections of these homes and having to meet certain requirements for habitability for some of these homes, but I think that's been pushed back so hard on the landlord side that I don't think they've ever gotten there yet. But something like that would probably help, is that they have to have a certain threshold to even be able to consider it a viable occupied house.
Yeah, I'll keep that in mind as I'm looking at programs and what other folks are doing. I vaguely remember seeing some workaround in the PAYS system that worked better for that type of customer, but I don't remember off the top of my head exactly what it was. So I'll see if I can find that language.
Okay.
Anything else that you all are seeing or that we haven't talked about program wise? Okay. So really, the next question here is in response to what we've heard from members in surveys and conversations is, you want us to be in this space to help somehow. So our question is how. We, talked with OMPA and have talked to some of our other agencies in like AMP in Ohio, in that area. We've talked to some folks in Wisconsin to see what they're doing. Most of them do have some sort of a coordinated program. Most of them are working with an outside vendor to do so. So I guess one of the questions is, do you all have an appetite for us to do some sort of a study of potentials in this space? That's what Oklahoma did first. They went out and, contracted to see what the penetration and benefit might be from different programs. And then they picked from those programs and then did an RFP for those specific programs and then went on. Do you want us to piggyback on what other people are doing and piggyback on those studies, I guess, and the utility cost tests that we're seeing published, and maybe go straight to looking at some programs and really kind of digging into what the economics of those might look and how we could run them? Do you want us to look at some sort of a suite that we can just offer a la carte? Do you just want us to be here for education and helping you communicate whatever it is that you're doing, or something else? Those are all your options. What do you want us to do? John says, or none of the above.
We certainly appreciate the help. I mean, and kind of the AMI or time of use, that we're kind of going that alone. But I do think there would be some benefit on some, especially as part of MOPEP, maybe some pool wide where you kind of aggregate those costs. I don't know. There are existing studies. I think if there were some proven things other people have already proven to be effective, maybe focusing or looking at those on maybe a pool level where that would make sense.
Yeah, there are definitely programs like we talked about with the controllable thermostats that could be pool specific plugged in, but if, another city that's not in a pool wanted to plug in, we could probably do that. We would, have some cost allocation discussions about how we would pay for the fixed costs versus the, per meter type costs, the ones that are per customer, but that's certainly something we can look at. And I will plug for the conference. We are going to have Virtual Peaker there, which is the company that's doing OMPA's thermostat program. So certainly that would be a great opportunity to just learn more about how it works in practice and what they're seeing, is kind of a next step from an educational standpoint there. Obviously, we would do an RFP and see who would be the best bidder, if we were going to do a project like that, but that should give us some more opportunities for education.
Hey, Rebecca, what would a potential study look like? Would you hire somebody to do that outside? What would that, I guess I'm trying to think between the pools and the individual cities, how that would look.
Yeah, that's what OMPA did. We have a copy of the study that they had done. I believe it was Lighthouse and in conjunction with TEA, since TEA helps them out on supply. But they went out and looked at specific programs. They looked at what they thought the measurable benefits would be, kind of what you see if you look at like Ameren's IRP for demand side management programs that go in, and it shows, the potential for the different programs, what they think they could actually achieve from the programs, and just kind of stacking them up against each other is kind of what that type of study would look like. And yeah, like I said, OMPA had somebody contracted to go do that. As far as the pools versus individual cities, I think that would be a little unique in our standpoint. So we'd have to maybe ask for some different case studies to be run to see how, Springfield might look different from SwimPep or something like that.
Yeah. And I was just trying to think of it from a cost perspective. I mean, I think a potential study would be interesting. I just don't know how much you're committing to do something like that.
It sort of strikes me that if you looked at, let's just say 5 joint action agencies that do much of the same thing that we do and looked at their programs, I'll bet you would find 2 or 3 programs that were universal. I'll bet there's going to be a thermostat program, for sure. There's probably going to be a rebate program of some variety on insulation or higher efficiency air conditioners. And one of the things I would like to see us do, but only if you see value in it, of course, is go ahead and get started with some of those common denominator kinds of programs. In other words, get our program boat in the water. And then after we get a little experience, and now I'm talking about a year, 2 years, 3 years, something like that, enough time to where you can have some acceptance and some interest on the part of the members, and then perhaps come back and customize to the extent there's customization that would be of value. We're talking about OMPA, we're talking about WPPI in Wisconsin, we're talking about AMP over in Ohio and other states. And so, at least to some degree, we're pretty similarly situated from a climate standpoint, perhaps from a customer standpoint. And I guess I'm thinking, why reinvent the wheel at least up front? Now, you all could say, we don't need your help to do this. We can do this on our own. And if that's the approach that you wanted us to take, or for us to take on your behalf, we'll just stand down. I do think there is value, however, Jeff, to use you as an example, because you're getting out in front on a couple of things. I think there is some advantage to some standardization, because there is certainly some overlap. Pick 2 communities that are pretty close together. You know, you can think about several of you in your general part of the world, Higginsville and Chillicothe and you guys. Well, there's going to be some exchange of information there across those communities. And so if Ron decides to do X and you do Y and Matt does Z, okay, they might all three be good programs, but would you get more bang for your buck if there was some standardization? So just a thought, maybe just a thought starter, a conversation starter. This is not the end all be all conversation we're going to have about it, but your input is really helpful to us, because if you all don't see the need for us to help you move this along, as I say, we'll stand down.
I don't know if this is going to add any value to what John just said, but I'll echo some of that. And kind of like from the MOPEP perspective, is that if we're doing it as the same program for MOPEP wide, then it alleviates the question marks of potential cost shifting from this city to that city, what's happening, things like that. If it's it's something I think we all see value in. It's then working through the details of, okay, if it's a thermostat program, how do you manage the thermostat program across 35 cities? Does the city rebate the customer? OMPA's model where OMPA's rebating the customer? Do we develop like the Ameren website model, or finding that provider and modeling that website and using that website for MPUA's thermostat program or MOPEP's thermostat program, and the customer's just getting it from the rebate there? But kind of like what John just said is in my mind too, is the thermostat program it doesn't make it right because everybody else is doing it. But if everybody's doing it, surely there's already been a lot of that utility cost benefit identified, that it's having some value if everybody keeps coming to the same to the same conclusion.
Well, Chad, I think it's probably true. We think about cross subsidy issues just like you do in your own systems, between rate classes, between types of service. And we want to try to do the business that we do on your behalf so that we don't do too much of that. Yeah. And if we do it with everybody's full knowledge. Yeah. In my perfect world, everybody at least in the same pool would do the same kinds of programs, to your point. But I'd take it a step further. Now, the horse is already most of the way out of the barn on AMI, on billing systems. I mean, it would be wonderful if you had similarity. And obviously, some of you have the same kinds of programs, but it's only because that's a coincidence. I would almost go so far as to say, whenever you all get ready to do the next generation of those things, let's do it together and get the economies of scale, and to the fullest extent possible, Chad, eliminate the cross subsidy issues. Now it's kind of a big brother kind of an approach. And I guess we'd be the big brother in that. And again, we're only going to do what you want us to do on your behalf. But I like the idea of some similarity across systems.
I'm kind of curious, would the thought be to do it on those with the highest benefit to cost? I mean, the OMPA was a pretty good study, and there's some pretty solid programs identified in there. And we've mentioned at the pool meetings, the DVR, demand voltage response, in that in their study, and typically of studies, that's got one of the highest benefit to cost ratios. Is that a starting point potentially?
I guess I'm not sure, John. And I guess in my mind, I was thinking more the thermostat program. While that may have different impacts for each city because of load factors and energy utilization and everything, and load rates or at load rates. But if we do it on a pool-wide basis, well, the pool obviously still saves money, even if a large percentage of the customers that are interested in that program are, if the participants don't match up with the population participate or percentages of each city or loads or anything like that. maybe it doesn't matter because overall the pool's saving on capacity, overall the pool's saving on energy. Maybe. That's in a very simplistic approach. The demand voltage reduction, yeah, that's going to impact each individual city's meter, so to say. So I'm not sure how to share those benefits if it's demand voltage reduction. I think there's a lot of merit to what you just said. Yeah, if that's the easiest, if that's that's a low hanging fruit, but I'm not sure how you split those savings. It'd be great if we can.
It would get into the measurement. And since we would have the metering at the tie points, that for the pool cities, I think there's a pretty straightforward path to measurement of that or estimating that.
Yeah, and maybe there's a way to do a shared savings that some of the savings is the local, some of the savings is pool wide.
My thought was initially to treat it like you would behind the meter, where you're essentially measuring it and quantifying it on a system-wide standpoint rather than flowing that through on individual city meters.
One of the details to be worked out, probably.
I was going to say, once we get into the pools, we have the cost allocation piece that we get to have fun with, like we always do. But first step is there value? Is there value to somebody? And if there is, we can figure out how to share it.
Yeah, I think we've got some interest in it. I did a webinar and it's been 6-7 years ago on voltage reduction. I think the tough part is, you know, in my mind, everybody would need AMI so you know what that reduction is. I mean, you don't want to negatively affect your customer if, you know, you're just trying to lower voltage. But I mean, I think Steve and I were just talking about it a little bit ago, and we both have AMI and we're able to kind of do that. So we'd be interested in seeing, you know, what that would look like, or for lack of a better term, to be the guinea pig and work with staff on what that could look like. But I think AMI is kind of central to that as well. I think if you're going to do those kind of things, you got to do it based on information, and I don't know what everybody's ability to move forward with that is.
On the voltage reduction, wouldn't that kind of benefit both? I mean, because if I lower my voltage, lower my load, that's going to lower the pool's load as a whole. You know what I mean? So if each individual city is doing what they can do, I mean, like or with us, we've got some outliers that we're probably going to have to put some voltage regulators or something in to keep the voltage on the end of the line up. So, you know, there's going to be some individual costs there occurred by each city. But as a whole, I mean, if I can lower my load in the peak time, that's going to benefit me as it's going to benefit the pool, because it's going to also lower the pool's load. So I think it'd be kind of a dual benefit there.
And my concept was you'd do it on all the pool members in the same time frame or based on local congestions. So
right. Yeah.
If you're doing it
up in my area, then we do it up there with Marshall, Carrollton, and everybody up there. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And if everybody has the ability to do it, but shy of everybody having the ability to do it, then is it somehow a cost sharing and a cost shifting?
Yeah, that is one of the thorns of the devil's in the details of being to do it on all the time on the transformers.
John, what kind of, if everybody participated and was able to do the demand voltage reduction, what kind of percentage would you see as being achievable in drop in load?
You know, theoretical on, you know, particular applications to, you know, such as a 3% voltage drop probably yields about a 2% reduction. So, you know, 2% on 500 megawatts is about 10 megawatts.
And obviously for those not in the pools, they could take and extrapolate those same numbers for their peaks. So basically for it's about 2/3% load reduction or capacity for voltage drop.
Yeah, that varies a little bit depending on the type of load, but that's kind of a rule of thumb kind of basis. If you were doing it for a winter load and a lot of resistance heat, it's probably greater than that.
Okay. Thank
Just to kind of support what John was just saying, the investor-owned utility, Missouri Public Service, they wired in voltage reduction that was implemented via SCADA at the operations center, and that was a rural-based utility primarily, over 200 communities, and it was, John, just like, you know, like you said, targeting 3%. We got over a 2% reduction, probably about 2.5% reduction. And to your point, we did that during the summer. We didn't target that in the winter, and it could have been more, but we were all over those the benefits that John shared. Thanks.
So as far as next steps from today's meeting, I think as far as the pools go, we do have in plan to come up with some sort of a pilot on the voltage reduction piece particularly. And then from that, you know, it sounds like there might be some interest in looking more into these programs and maybe taking a next step and talking to some more of the vendors that our sister agencies are using to start to get more of a feel for how that might actually look and how the economics might work if we were trying to offer a program that would work for the pools the same as working for a member city that wasn't in a pool, and just kind of trying to get a better feel for what's out there in some of those more broadly offered programs. Does that sound like a fair next step? I'm seeing some heads shaking and some thumbs up in the room. So we will continue down that path. Just, you know, another plug for the virtual peaker in the interim. I'll send these slides so you can go to all the fun links if you would like to, and you can always call and talk to me about it because I love to talk about demand side resources. Anything else from those on the phone or anybody in the room that want to throw in today? All right, I appreciate all of your time and good feedback. Thank you.